Hi, this is Pastor Tom, and boy, if there was a week I wish I was with you all, it is this week. And I'm here to introduce Susan Hulcher in our final week of Proof of Life. Susan is an amazing person with an amazing faith story to share with you today. I remember the first Sunday I saw her in the sanctuary. She was so affirming for everything that was going on, including during the sermon. And boy, she's one of those people that just gives you encouragement by being in a place. And today she's about to give encouragement to all of us, regardless of what's going on in our lives, as she shares her faith story, her testimony, especially from the last couple of years. I wish I could be there with you. And Susan, we know that God is with you and pray that God's affirmation be felt in your heart as you speak today. Brothers and sisters, our friend and our sister, Susan Hulcher.
Good morning. So, God started letting me know of His love when I was about 8 years old. I was an only child, and my grandparents would drive across my small town in northeastern Ohio every Sunday to take me to church with them. My childhood was sort of rocky because of my parents' relationship, and they divorced when I was 11 years old. My father left my life completely and moved to the West Coast. We had absolutely no contact until my high school graduation. He attended and invited me to come to Orlando to live with he and my stepmother. As you can imagine, leaving a town, my mother, my friends, everything I'd known for 18 years, I was a little lonely. I had a heartfelt desire for fellowship and for meeting some people. So I went by myself to Conway United Methodist Church in Orlando, just down the street from where we lived, and it was there that I met this handsome, 6'4" hunk, Clinton, that you heard from several weeks ago. We met in the youth group, MYF. Shortly thereafter, the whole youth group attended a conference, and through the words and the music, I realized that God was the Father that was missing in my life, and that I needed Him. And so I asked Him into my 18-year-old heart. Proof of life. Well, we married 6 years later, and we're blessed with 3 amazing children, Amy, Andrew, and Monica. We were extremely involved in all aspects of our church. And I think it would be safe to say that we served in every capacity except the custodian and the pastor, and I'm glad we didn't do that. We lived our lives and attempted to serve God in every way that we possibly could. As our children grew up, I didn't realize how important this foundation would be. Now take a leap with me into 2012, when Clinton retired after an illustrious career with the Orange County Sheriff's Office, and we moved to Ponce Inlet and started attending church here, but only on the weekends because I was still working. We then celebrated my retirement from the Orange County Sheriff's Office in September of 2018, and we're looking forward to becoming full-time involved here at First Church and definitely do some traveling. Well, within 8 months, Clinton began experiencing extreme sciatica pain, stomach issues, and began having difficulties walking, as he shared with you when he spoke several weeks ago. And in the midst of that, in September of 2019, exactly 1 year after I retired, as chronicled in my prayer journal that I write in and have done so for 7 years every night, I happened to feel what felt like a swollen gland in my neck. I casually mentioned it to our daughter, Monica, who is a traveling registered nurse on one of her visits home. Isn't she beautiful? I'm a little biased. Yeah. She advised that no, it wasn't swollen, it was hardened. And she said I needed to schedule an appointment with my primary care physician as soon as possible. So I did so, and my doctor immediately scheduled a CT scan. And then called from her home that evening to advise that there was a mass. And she had called a gastro doctor for an appointment the very next day. The next day, he conducted an endoscopy, and it was that night that I, in my confusion, read the scripture from Jeremiah and penned it on a card, put it on my nightstand, and it is still there today. I am the Lord, the God of all mankind. Is there anything too hard for me? Well, the endoscopy confirmed that I had a mass on my esophagus. What? As a non-smoker, how did this happen? My next appointment was with an oncology specialist at Orlando Health, who ordered a whole array of tests. In October, I underwent another endoscopy, and because the tumor was very fibrous, my blood loss was so extensive that I was hospitalized. You can imagine how puzzling all of this was to me. Well, then on October 14th, the results were in. I had stage 4 adenoid cystic carcinoma, which typically is found on one's salivary glands, but in my case, it was in the form of a 3-inch tumor clinging to my esophagus. Well, the cancer had metastasized to my lymph nodes in my neck, and that's why it hardened. But that was my only symptom. I had no other symptoms. Ironically, this type of cancer does not respond to chemo or radiation, so surgery would be necessary and scheduled. In order to get the margins that they felt necessary to eradicate this tumor, the surgery would include a laryngectomy, which would result in my voice box being removed, and I would need to speak through a battery-operated machine. I would also have a stoma here in my neck for breathing. Well, imagine the afternoon that I received that news. I recall being very calm, and of course, in retrospect, I know I was being held in the palm of God's hand. It was suggested that with a surgery of this magnitude, we may want to seek a second opinion. During this time, thankfully, I had Monica to go with me, or at least listen in during my appointments by phone, to decipher all the medical jargon and all the things that the doctors were saying. My greatest heartache, I remember, was for our grandchildren, especially the younger ones, because they would never remember my voice. So I decided that Christmas to record several books for them and give them to them as gifts. There is no doubt in my mind that God led us to Mayo Clinic in Jacksonville. And December of 2019 found us in the office of Dr. Makey, a thoracic surgeon whose words I will never forget. As I sat there, he said, I think after reviewing all your scans, I may be able to preserve a very small part of your esophagus. I seriously wanted to get up, jump up, and hug that man. I was so excited. Proof of life. On January 17th, 2020, I underwent what was called a preconditioning surgery to prepare me for the impending operation by basically pulling up my stomach as well as inserting a feeding tube in my stomach. Monica then created a Facebook support page at this point so that we could keep everyone updated, as well as solicit their prayers and receive their words of encouragement. And there were 154 people on that page. Yay. I also used this time to memorize the words to 50 hymns so that they could remain in my mind and my heart in the upcoming weeks and months. Despite most surgeries being on hold at that time because of COVID, mine was a go and scheduled for March 23rd. We had to make numerous phone calls and receive special permission for Monica to be there with me, but God knew and she knew that I needed her. Proof of life. And surprisingly, as I look back on the morning of March 23rd, I am actually shocked that I even walked into that hospital knowing a little of what was about to take place. I do not recall. I have searched my mind, and I can tell you truthfully, I do not recall being nervous or scared. Both you and I know who was taking care of me. Believe me, it was not on my own power, since I'm one who worries about such things as, oh, I wonder what my hair's going to look like while I'm in surgery. Oh, I wonder if I'll need lip balm. But no, I marched right in there on the power of hundreds of prayers being uplifted on my behalf. Yours included. How can I ever say thanks? 3 surgeons, 3 angels of God, skillfully went in to debulk the tumor. The cardiothoracic surgeon made a 7-inch tumor on my right side, incision, on my right side to go in and deflate my lung in order to reach up to my trachea and esophagus to begin to peel away the tumor. The gastrointestinal surgeon built the gastric conduit, a new esophagus made from my stomach, and pulled it up through my diaphragm and connected it to the small, healthy remaining portion of my esophagus. The head and neck surgeon made an incision on the right side of my neck and removed 27 lymph nodes and inserted a drain. These 3 surgeons worked for 10 long hours, with Dr. Makey periodically updating Monica. I was kept sedated throughout that night and the whole next day, so all the tubes could remain, and I would not attempt to pull them out. I awoke to 2 chest tubes, a catheter, 3 drains, oxygen, a pain pump, thank you, Jesus, and a feeding tube. And one of the first things I remember them saying was that it was going to be necessary for me to get up and walk 3 times a day to avoid pneumonia. Well, that wasn't my worry right then, I can tell you, because it took at least 15 minutes to unhook all of this stuff, all this apparatus that was connected to me, for just a simple 10-minute shuffle down the hallway. and back. With my hospital gown flapping in the wind. And now I know why they call it the ICU. And of course, during this time, Clinton was hospitalized in Orlando, having his gallbladder removed and being cared for by our daughter, our son-in-law Jesse, and our 3 amazing grandchildren. Well, my doctors and nursing staff were nothing short of incredible. They were wonderful. But Monica definitely gets the Best Nurse Award for such things as putting my blanket on. Oh, Monica, I'm hot. Can you take it off? Taking my blanket off. Oh, Monica, it's chilly in here. Putting my blanket on. And getting my lip balm 25 times a day. She stayed in my room on the very comfortable, spacious, padded futon around the clock. And the staff nurses were so impressed and grateful for her professional assistance. She took amazing care of me. I must say, however, that there was a major drawback to having a nurse who knows you so well. One morning, I decided that, no, I really didn't want to get up. I didn't want to unhook all of this. I didn't want to take a walk. And I said so in this kind of a voice. She promptly put her hand on her hip, and those of you who know her can visualize this, looked me in the eye and said, "Do you love your grandchildren?" "Yes, to the moon and back," I replied. "Well, then get up. They're counting on you to get better and be back home to spend time with them." Okay. Off we went. Well, it was a long 10 days and nights, but the time finally came to travel home. Monica had to return to her real nursing job, and our sweet daughter Amy and 3 grandchildren became the medical staff for 2 patients. Our son Andrew came on the scene as well to take care of the logistics of preparing our condo by purchasing, assembling, and installing the equipment necessary for us to navigate and live each day. A ramp on the patio, shower bars, a car rack for Clinton's wheelchair. Our home health care nurses came only once a day, and we needed help in between. How can I say thanks for the unconditional love by my husband, who measured all my meds and helped me insert them into my feeding tube several times a day? I was unable to swallow, even water. My esophagus was only 1 millimeter wide. Yours is 20. The average is 20. Mine was 1. So an amazing speech therapist joined our village to help me rebuild those muscles. One of her exercises that I was to do 50 times a day was to bite the tip of my tongue and swallow. Try it. It's hard, isn't it? Yeah, do that 50 times a day. I knew you were trying. I was also so grateful for our insurance during this time and the personal care advocate that they assigned to me. She called me regularly, and I could contact her at any time with insurance questions or just to whine a little bit. Sometimes we would talk for an hour. She was my hero. And our dear friends loved and cared for our dogs during this time as well, because we couldn't walk them and take care of them. How can I say thanks? My feeding tube was my best friend during this time because it was my only source of nourishment. and my method of receiving my meds, but it could also be my enemy. I named him J.J. Dangler, and he and I exchanged many words when he became clogged. And he had to be surgically removed because of him being clogged 5 times. So, I have been to Mayo 62 times since my surgery, and I must admit that wasn't the traveling that I had in mind when I retired. I have had so many wonderful Uber angels, many of you in this congregation and many neighbors who took me to all those visits, scans, endoscopies, stretchings, swallow tests, and COVID tests. Because before I can have a procedure at Mayo, I have to have a COVID test the day before in Jacksonville. Also, the many cards. Oh my goodness, the cards. We really utilize the U.S. Postal Service. And texts and prayers. How can I ever say thanks? At this time last year, thanks to the stretching and the steroids, yes, they injected Botox into my esophagus. Aren't you jealous? To keep it in place and to keep it rigid, I was able to enjoy chicken broth. Woo! Someone said, "Oh, didn't it taste wonderful?" No, not really. And then Jell-O. Yes, that was better. And then baby food. And then blender delicacies. Have you ever had spaghetti and meatballs in the blender? Try it. I began to eat then, at the end of last year, normal foods, but not anything spicy or peppery. I did find out with one pretty severe choking incident that was almost worthy of a 911 call that I shouldn't do pepper, Italian dressing, seasoning, or anything spicy. Doesn't work, but I made it. So you might ask, what has the proof of life been for me? Well, I have met God in a way that I never thought possible. I have seen demonstrated and felt the love of my husband, 3 children, 5 grandchildren, in ways that I will forever cherish and treasure, as well as so many of you, so many of my neighbors, so many of my friends. We have established close relationships that probably would have not been possible or as rich otherwise. I was able to return to my bed, sleeping in my bed after sleeping in the recliner for 10 months. But always and forever, I have to be at a 30-degree angle to avoid reflux. And now I'm a tenor, not a soprano. And I lost 55 pounds. Yeah. Not the doctor recommended method, however. So what does the future hold? I don't know that, but I do know who holds the future. I am scheduled for a CT scan, a scan to check on cancer hotspots every 6 months at Mayo. The last one was clear. And And I am scheduled for an endoscopy and stretching every 3 months. So my retirement travels will continue to Jacksonville. And I think I might earn the prize for the most endoscopies. Anybody? I have 8 so far. Anybody else? I win. My plan is to make the most of every day I have until God says, time's up. Truly, my heart's desire is to be an encourager and a mentor for others every single day, but especially for cancer patients and those who may even have a feeding tube. So please, if you know of them, allow me to be in touch with them. I have some feeding tube secrets I can share with them. In the meantime, I ask every single day, how can I say thanks for the things that you've done for me? Things so undeserved, yet you gave to prove your love for me. The voices of a million angels could not express my gratitude. All that I am and ever hope to be, I owe it all to thee. To God be the glory for the things he has done. Amen.
Amen.